Welcome to the Deep Dive. We sift through fascinating sources, pull out the key insights, basically giving you a shortcut to being genuinely well-informed. Today, we're diving into a sector that's maybe a bit misunderstood sometimes, but it's absolutely crucial for the economy. We're talking about debt collection.
Yeah, and our focus is this really interesting review paper. It looks at cutting-edge innovations happening right now in collections, specifically down in South Africa. Our mission, as always, is to pull out the most important bits, the nuggets of knowledge, so you get a sharp understanding of how this industry is evolving. And here's something that jumped out right away from the source material. Getting money back from debtors passed to external collection agencies. It's incredibly tough. The paper shows, for internal collections, the original company trying to collect maybe only 10% are total non-payers. About 30% pay in full.
Right.
But once it goes external, whoosh, a huge jump. 83% become non-payers, and full repayments, barely anyone, like 0.7%.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And those numbers really set the stage for why innovation is so critical here. Makes sense. Efficiency must be everything.
Absolutely. For profitability, you just have to be efficient. And that leads us to the core trends the research found. There's this growing move towards automated digital communication. The paper isn't just looking back, it's looking forward. It pinpoints 4 key areas, sort of pillars, where agencies can really boost their performance.
Okay.
So we're going to unpack those 4 areas, see how data, tech, even psychology are changing the game in this essential industry.
All right, let's get into that first pillar then. Innovative uses of data sources. So we're going beyond the usual stuff, right? Like client details and credit reports.
Exactly. We're talking about exploring totally new kinds of data.
What's the most surprising type? And what are they hoping to achieve with all this new info?
Well, the sheer variety is fascinating. But the paper stresses, and this is important, agencies need to check both the predictive power and the legality before diving in.
Right. Makes sense.
So one example is social media data. Now, it's not huge in South Africa yet, apparently, but U.S. examples show real potential. There are vendors out there like DataSift or GNIP that aggregate public data from Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter.
Public data only, though, because of privacy.
Precisely. That's a key limitation. You can generally only use what's publicly available. The aim is to try and link how people interact online with their likelihood to pay. Connect behavior to propensity.
Okay, interesting. What else?
Then there's geolocation data. This could be inferred from, say, cell phone data or social media check-ins.
Not tracking people live, sure.
Oh, no. More about patterns, like are there hotspots of debtors? Does location correlate with repayment behavior? That kind of thing. Also understanding an agency's own social media reach in different places.
Got it.
And related to that, device data.
Like what phone I use.
Yeah, or tablet or desktop. The idea is maybe tailor the communication. Mobile users might prefer an app. Desktop users maybe email, though that's changing fast, obviously. It could also look at when people are active on devices. Is there a better time of day to try and communicate to get a promise to pay?
Okay.
And then the big one, perhaps, data brokers or data aggregators.
Oh, the companies that collect everything.
Pretty much. Companies like Axiom in the U.S. or Background Check International and SA, they gather data from all over. You've got identifying data, sure, but also things like social media habits, heavy Facebook user, online influencer, demographics, public records, general interests, financial indicators like employment or income, even travel and purchase history.
Wow.
The level of detail is incredible. It allows for this really granular profiling, which can then feed into tailored collection strategies.
So they are used in South Africa?
Yes, data brokers are used. But the paper notes that some categories, especially that online behavioral data, its use seems limited, or at least not well documented there yet.
Okay, the sheer amount of data is just,
Yeah.
wow. It
Right.
really opens up possibilities. But also, questions. Big questions about privacy and what actually works, what's genuinely predictive.
That's exactly the tightrope they have to walk. Assess the predictive value. Assess the legality. It's a constant balancing act. And here's a really notable point from the paper. Despite how ubiquitous mobile phones are, they found 0 studies explicitly using mobile phone data for collections.
Really? None.
None cited. Yet, the paper strongly recommends South African agencies should investigate this. It's seen as a major untapped potential resource.
Okay, that's fascinating. So from gathering all this diverse data,
Blech.
How are agencies actually using it? You mentioned traditional models like logistic regression.
Right.
But the paper points towards machine learning as the new frontier.
Mhm.
How big a deal is this shift? What does ML actually bring?
It's a pretty significant shift. Those traditional techniques like logistic regression, which is basically a statistical way to predict a yes-no outcome, like will they pay? They're common in essay. Banks and agencies have used them for years.
But they have weaknesses.
They do, especially if the underlying assumptions about the data don't hold true. And often with complex human behavior, they don't. That's where machine learning ML steps in. ML has really grown because it's incredibly good at finding these deep patterns, complex relationships, and huge data sets that a human analyst or even traditional stats would likely miss.
So it's not just one technique.
Oh, no, it's a whole toolkit. The paper mentions things like neural networks, support vector machines, decision trees, random forests, lots of different approaches.
Still complicated.
The specific algorithms can be, yes, but the key takeaway is that this diverse toolkit lets agencies uncover patterns they couldn't see before, and that leads to real results. For instance, one financial institution used ML-based analytics and cut losses on delinquent accounts by over $2 million. Another agency boosted their agent performance by 18%.
Wow, those are serious numbers.
They really are. But here's a counterintuitive finding, which I think is really important. In one case study, ML didn't actually blow logistic regression out of the water in terms of overall prediction, but it still identified almost $500,000 in good debt that the traditional model had misclassified. Money left on the table.
Ah, so it's not just about overall accuracy, but finding those missed opportunities.
Exactly. It highlights the nuances. And another study challenged a common assumption. You might think homeowners would be better payers, right?
Yeah, seems logical.
Well, the data in that particular study didn't actually support it, which just reinforces the need to base decisions on data, not just gut feelings or assumptions.
Right. Data-driven insights.
Ah.
What kind of data points do these successful models typically use?
The paper cites a German study with a huge data set, 150,000 accounts. They found things like the amount owed, how old the debt is, older debts are harder to collect, previous collection history, macroeconomic factors like unemployment.
Okay, that makes sense.
Also, the type of debtor companies tended to repay better than individuals in that study, even how intensely a customer complained. Higher intensity complaints often meant lower collection rates. Repayment method mattered, bankruptcy, obviously. A whole range of factors.
So the bottom line here seems to be, it's not about finding one silver bullet algorithm. It's about having a range of tools and constantly testing your assumptions against the data.
That's precisely it. The recommendation is, use traditional methods as your baseline, sure, but really scrutinize their assumptions. Especially when your data is messy or nonlinear, that's where ML can really shine. And crucially, use champion-challenger strategies.
Right, you mentioned that. Test the old against the new.
Yes. Apply your current best strategy, the champion, to most accounts. Then test a new approach to challenger on a smaller, similar group. Compare the results statistically. It's a structured way to learn and improve. You can even build models that combine outputs from different techniques.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Continuous improvement. So we've covered the data and the models. Now let's shift to the actual operations, how agents interact with debtors, or maybe how technology is changing that interaction. This is where the strategies really hit the ground, right?
Absolutely. And there's a huge shift happening here. According to FICO, the analytics company, debtors increasingly prefer digital, automated ways to interact.
Really? They prefer that over talking to a person?
Apparently so, in many cases. And this is massive for the industry because call center staff costs are enormous, up to 70% of total collection costs.
Wow, 70%?
Yeah. And South Africa has a huge call center industry. Estimates vary wildly, but tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of employees. Globally, AI is already starting to impact the simpler call center jobs. So there's a big push towards automation.
So what do these innovative automated strategies look like?
Well, machine learning comes back in. Not just for scoring risk, but for creating smarter cues for agents, like figuring out the optimal order to contact debtors, maybe using something called a snake draft method to distribute workload fairly and effectively.
Okay.
Then there's optimized scheduling for the agents themselves, using mathematical techniques like mixed integer formulations. Sounds complex, but the result can be needing 15-20% fewer staff without hurting performance.
Significant savings there.
Definitely. And then you have things like app-based solutions, sometimes using avatars.
Avatars? Like a cartoon character?
Sort of, yeah. The idea is to reduce the stigma, make it less intimidating to interact about debt. There's an example called AvaPay. The research suggests these apps can improve collection rates and agent productivity because agents handle fewer routine interactions.
Huh. Interesting approach.
There are also interactive websites, sometimes called online debt collection. A U.S. company, TrueAccord, is a big example. They use behavioral analytics, ML, and what they call a humanistic approach, all automated.
And does it work?
They report a 20% boost in collections and agents being 10 times more productive. It guides debtors through repayment in a less confrontational way.
Okay, that sounds promising.
The paper also suggests incorporating real-life stories. Sharing anonymized stories of people who successfully managed their debt and improved their situation.
Sort of like social proof or inspiration.
Exactly. It can ease communication, make the process seem less daunting, and maybe encourage positive behavior.
Right.
And one more. Ringless voicemail drops.
Ringless. How does that work?
Basically, technology like VoApp's Direct Drop lets an agency send a voicemail message directly to someone's inbox without their phone actually ringing.
I think I've had those.
Maybe. The benefits are potentially avoiding some regulations around live calls, and debtors can listen when they have time, which might improve how they feel about the agency contacting them. Less intrusive.
So taken together, these aren't just small tweaks.
Mm-hmm.
They're really changing the whole experience of being contacted about debt. Less intrusive for the debtor, more efficient for the agency.
That's the goal. Yes, a potential win-win driven by technology.
Okay, so you've got all these new data sources, new models, new interaction strategies. How do agencies actually figure out if this stuff is working? It seems like it could get complicated fast. How do you measure success accurately?
That's a critical piece, and the paper highlights the challenge of objective evaluation, especially when strategies have multiple components working together. Plus, you have to account for external factors, right? Like, are you comparing groups with different demographics, or did the economy change between tests?
Yeah, lots of variables.
So, first step, predefine criteria. You must decide how you'll measure success, collection rate, cost per collection, time to collect, whatever it is, before you even start a new strategy. Set the goalposts up front.
Makes sense.
And you have to account for macroeconomic factors if you're comparing strategies run at different times. A strategy might look great just because the economy improved, or vice versa.
Right, control for the environment.
Then there are specific tools. One is speech analytics software.
Analyzing the calls.
Exactly. Managers can't possibly listen to every call in a busy center. This software, from companies like Nexidia or CallMiner, can analyze thousands of calls automatically. It can flag call quality issues, spot irregularities, even identify keywords or phrases that correlate with good or bad outcomes, like promises kept or broken. You can even feed this into automated strategies using speech to text.
That's powerful, turning conversations into data.
Absolutely. And then, back to the champion-challenger strategy, we talked about it for models, but it's just as crucial for evaluating the overall strategy.
The 80-20 split idea.
Right, or whatever split makes sense.
Yeah.
Run the current champion strategy on the majority, test the new challenger strategy on a comparable minority, then use statistics to see if the challenger delivered a real significant improvement. It's the gold standard for testing. And finally, the paper mentions the importance of separate evaluation of components. Don't just look at the final result. Try to understand which parts are working. So evaluate the predictive power of the data itself. Use statistical techniques, but, and this is key, expert interpretation is needed. Don't just rely on algorithms to pick variables.
Human oversight.
Yes. Evaluate model performance rigorously. Make sure you're comparing apples with apples, same time periods, same data sets when building challenger models, and model accuracy through backtesting. Compare what your model predicted would happen with what actually happened. Look at it portfolio-wide, but also drill down to individual debtors considering the actual amounts involved.
So a really layered process. Define success, control variables, use analytics, test rigorously with champion challenger, and break down the components.
Exactly. It's about building a culture of continuous data-driven improvement.
This whole deep dive really paints a picture of an industry, collections, that maybe seems traditional from the outside, but it's actually undergoing this massive transformation. It's pretty fascinating how it pulls together data science, ML, psychology, legal stuff, all focused on making this crucial economic function work better.
It really does. And the paper's conclusion reinforces that. Even small improvements in different parts of the process, data, models, agent strategies, evaluation, they can add up to really significant gains in efficiency and profit. The big takeaway seems clear. The future of collections is increasingly digital, increasingly automated. That's likely to become the industry standard before too long.
Which leads us to a final thought for you, our listeners, to maybe chew on. Think about how these huge technological shifts in debt collection don't just change business operations, but how they might fundamentally alter the relationship between big institutions and individuals who are in financial difficulty. What does it mean